franchise. That is Toyota of New Orleans at 13150 I-10 Service Road in New Orleans East. Has it all. Avalons, Tundras, Highlanders, Camrys, Corollas, RAV4s. You want proven vehicles. You want a proven product. You want Toyota of New Orleans. And that's where sportsNOLAtv originates from today at Toyota of New Orleans. And it's great to have you with us. And a pleasant good evening. Ken Trahan with you. Special time tonight for sportsNOLAtv. And of course, we always enjoy talking about what's transpired this past weekend. And quite frankly, even though we're journalists, at least some of us are, we enjoy talking about wins. They're more fun to talk about than losses unless there's real controversy. Then, of course, there's a lot of subject matter to get into. But the Saints are winners. They're moving on. We'll talk about that. Bowl games, much, much more with our outstanding panelists, including former New Orleans Saints wide receiver Torrance Small. Torrance, good evening to you.
Hey, how we doing, Ken? And Happy New Year's to all. Hey, the new year has started off great. Great football. BCS finally got it right. BCS games so far have been great. Hope we have a good one tonight.
Bunch of underdogs winning games, but we'll get into that a little bit later on. Brian Alley Walsh of sportsNOLA.com here to provide his journalistic excellence this evening. Brian, good evening to you.
Good evening, Dr. Trahan.
My pleasure.
You know, when you said journalistic excellence, Ricky looks at me like, ooh, where? Great win for the Saints. Great win for the Saints.
Yes.
And of course, the guy you alluded to, the Hall of Famer himself, the Ring of Honoree, the everything, whatever, just give him a title that fits. Ricky Jackson. Ricky?
Yeah, I'll
Happy
tell
New
you
Year.
what.
Good to have you with us.
Thank you, Ken. Happy New Year to everybody. Brian, the only one picked the Saints to lose last week, so that's why he all of a sudden he's on the bandwagon now. But you know, we'll let him on the bandwagon because he's from New Orleans.
But he had good reason to feel that way.
Thank you, Ken.
The numbers all pointed toward Philadelphia. Yes. They really did. But you don't play the game with numbers, right?
I mean, anytime you got Drew Brees and Coach Payton, you got to go with the Saints.
Okay. Drew Brees was okay. Coach Payton was real good. And the Saints defense was excellent as well. And we're going to break all of that down. You're going to have a chance to see the highlights, and there were many highlights. And, of course, you'll get expert analysis of the Saints' playoff win at Philadelphia when we continue in just a moment from Toyota of New Orleans, I-10 Service Road, New Orleans East, right here on WHNO, Channel 20. What's remarkable is that that's 6 out of 139 in playoff history. That's right, a record of 6 and 133 if you turn it over twice or more and you have that kind of margin against the opposition. It's truly remarkable that the Saints were able to win this game. Ken Trahan, sportsNOLAtv from Toyota of New Orleans, I-10 Service Road in New Orleans East. And as we look back at this game, Torrance, I guess we'll start right there. I think the fact that the Saints won this game with a -2 turnover margin illustrates that they were clearly the better team in this game.
Yes, not only that, it shows clearly how great our defense is. Our defense played great. To get 2 turnovers in the whole offense of the caliber of Philadelphia Eagles was a great thing. Not only that, we held Deshaun McCoy. We held him under 100 yards, which was a good thing. I think they played an excellent game defensively. That's one thing that helped us out. Also, Coach Sean Payton did a great job offensively in the second half and calling plays.
Well, I thought they were a step ahead all night long. Thought they had a great game plan. Thought they won the line of scrimmage on both sides, Brian. And again, he mentioned Payton, so, and I know Ricky will second this, but when you look at what Payton not only did in this game, what he's done this year with Rob Ryan in tow, just illustrates how elite he is as a coach in this league, and the fact that this team won despite the -2 turnovers, and the fact that he made the moves he made in Week 15 with Armstead and Graham. Obviously, you got to have guts to do that. Obviously, it's paying off.
And I think, Kenny, I think the team feeds off of those kinds of decisions, and what Rob Ryan and his defensive group has done, piecing together an injury-riddled unit has been absolutely amazing, and he's going to have to do that again when they go to Seattle because of the injuries they sustained in the victory against Philadelphia. But you're absolutely right. I mean, that Peyton, Ryan, it's a winning combination.
Ricky, I mentioned the fact that the Saints were clearly the better team and that they won this game up front. They were better on both sides of the ball up front. Their offensive line just whipped Philadelphia's defensive front all night, and their defensive front whipped Philadelphia's offensive line all night. That's why McCoy couldn't get going. That's why they were able to get to the quarterback without blitzing.
I'll tell you what, like I said before about those college coaches, when they come in, a lot of people not familiar with them, and they get a chance to hit you with a lot of things. But as the year goes, you can see that coaches really get a beat on them, and they're not as easy, as harder to figure out. And you can see that's what happened. Coach figured them out, and we had a good game plan ready for them.
I thought the Saints really set the tone on that first play of the game from scrimmage, Torrance, when Ingram runs right, big hole, 17 yards, and then throws the defender to the ground. They really set the tone right there. They established this is my game up front. We're going to beat you physically, and I thought that play personified it.
Yes, and I want to give big props to Ingram, because when you mess up, I am one of the ones that's very hard on you. You stepped up this game. We need you. Pierre wasn't there. You did a great job, and like Kenny said, you set the tone. He set the tone for the rest of the game of what it's going to be like. 185 yards in rushing for the whole game. I thought he did an outstanding job, as well as the offensive line.
Brian, what's really nice is that for a change, the Saints won a road game where their quarterback didn't have to play great. They won a road game where their quarterback didn't throw for 300 yards. They won a road game where their quarterback, frankly, stunk in the first half. In the second half, he looked like Drew Brees. He was 10 of 12, 152 yards and a touchdown, but overall, very modest numbers in a very modest game, and they still won.
Well, you know what? When I saw Kenny, when I saw Pierre Thomas was going to miss, my first thoughts were, that's a big loss. On the second thought of it, though, was that, you know what? It removes one other element that Sean Payton has to deal with in his rotational packages all the time. I just think sometimes you get a player like Mark Ingram, he just gets better, when he touches the ball, and in this kind of game, there is no denying it. You go on the road, it's championship football. These guys know this. You run the football and you stop the football, and they did both extremely well Saturday night, and that's why they're moving on.
Yes, one thing that you talked about, Ingram had an opportunity to get more touches, and we said this offense was not made for him because he was not allowed to get that many touches. By Pierre being down, it gave him opportunity to get more touches, and he showed that he is capable to be in the NFL, but I always thought he should go to another team because he'll get those more touches. We just didn't have enough balls here to give to him.
Ricky, if you don't have injury, if Paris Harrelson doesn't get hurt, Will Herring has to come in. If Keenan Lewis doesn't get hurt, and Rod Sweeting has to play, and you have to move White over to the front side, the Saints might have won this game by 3 scores.
Yeah, I mean, the defense was playing so well until those guys got hurt and went out. And then Philadelphia looked like a whole nother team once they feel like we had our second or third guys in there. But, I mean, you have to take your hat off to Coach Payton for the whole year because, when he stopped marking and all those guys down, he was sending those guys a message. And when those guys got a chance to play, they was hungry and ready to play. And you can see the difference yesterday out of Mark in the last ball game. These guys hungry and they ready to play because they know they'll be just like the kicker or the offensive lineman. They'll be removed. So guys, when they see that their job on the line, they play better.
Kyrie Robinson's a great story, Torrance. This is a guy that not only wasn't drafted, but he got to the Saints via a tryout, and then they almost didn't invite him to camp. It's a good thing they did. This guy was critical on that final drive. He ran well. He shows good vision and shows good power.
Well, he's been showing that all preseason. He showed that in the preseason, that he's more than capable of coming in and playing in the NFL. And as Ricky alluded to earlier, here's a guy, this guy's hungry. This guy wants a job. This guy, we talked about earlier, maybe need a new pair of shoes. this guy wants a job, and he's showing that he can play in the NFL.
Let's take a look at the final numbers from the game, which clearly indicate that the Saints were the better side. Total yardage dominant on the Saints side. Look at the rushing yards, 185, second most this year for the Saints. The only number that skews poorly is the turnovers. The Saints were great on third down, dominated time of possession, which they've done much of the year. Brian, you can't take away the turnovers. They're part of the game, but Drew Brees has to play better than this if they want to have any chance whatsoever moving forward.
Yeah, and you know what? You got an inkling that Drew didn't bring his A game, if you will. That pass down the sideline to Darren Sproles was poorly underthrown.
Could have been a touchdown.
Yeah, really, because he had a couple strides on the defender, and it was either the wind or he didn't put enough velocity on or something, but you thought, oh, here we go. And but you know what? He righted himself. He's a veteran. And the thing that you have to take into account when you play playoff football, you've got Drew Brees, a proven veteran, a guy that's going into the Hall of Fame, going against a young, unproven quarterback in the elements. I don't care if Philadelphia's at home or not. And Drew Brees did just enough to get him into the next, the next game.
With a lot of help from his friends, Ricky. When you look at the way guys performed, I mentioned Curtis Lofton earlier, played very well. Cameron Jordan, he's played that way all season long. He's been terrific. And again, this defensive story continues to be amazing. Rob Ryan, if there's such a thing as defensive coach of the year in the NFL, he's it by a landslide.
Yeah, I mean, Coach did a great job over there. And he got 4 guys up front that he really can use and work. He don't have to go with a big blitz package. You can see that, and that makes a big difference. I mean, it's Cameron Jordan, the way he playing, and Gillette now, the way those guys coming up field and putting pressure on the quarterback. I mean, you got to take your hat off the coach. He found him 4 good guys that can play up front, and that make the whole key to this defense.
You know what's really cool, Torrance, is Marcus Colston's a non-factor in this game. Lance Moore did catch a touchdown pass. Jimmy Graham, they took him away with double coverage, and here they are, still winning.
A lot of unusual things happened in this game. One, we went up there first in the cold, we won the game. We ran the ball a lot better we ran the ball more than we passed the ball and got yards. That was unusual. It was just a lot of unusual things that happened in this game.
When we return in just a moment, we'll take a look at the rest of the NFL playoffs as sportsNOLA continues from Toyota New Orleans in the East on WHNO Channel 20. Our sportsNOLA.com trivia question of the evening surrounds running the football. Mark Ingram fell just short of the 100-yard plateau against the Eagles. He had 97 yards, as you know. And the trivia question, how many 100-yard rushing performances have the Saints had in their playoff history? Lenny Van Gilder comes up with some good ones. This wasn't. It's too easy. I promise you. Think about it, and we'll have the correct answer a little bit later in the show. Props to Lenny, does a great job, but I do think this one's kind of easy. Let's see if you know it as well. Ken Trahan, sportsNOLA TV from Toyota of New Orleans in the East on the I-10 service road where the deals are great, and that includes on 2013s, not just the new fleet of 2014s here at Toyota of New Orleans. Well, the NFL playoffs got underway with Wild Card Weekend. The Saints were just one of those teams in action and advancing, but there were others as well, and it was a special weekend. Unbelievable football game in Indianapolis at Lucas Oil Stadium. The Colts rallying from a 38-10 deficit to overcome the Chiefs 45-44 in an instant classic. And it puts Andrew Luck on the map and solidifies him as a guy to watch in the future with potential greatness. San Diego with a better quarterback won at Cincinnati 27-10. No way in the world you win with a -4 in turnovers. You might get away with 2, but not 4. And the Bengals could not escape that fate. And then at Green Bay, in those horrendous temperature games that we're so accustomed to seeing late in the season or in the playoffs, San Francisco won 23-20. Colin Kaepernick, it was all about him on the game-winning drive. And the 49ers, the better team, move on. Okay, so we look at these playoff results, Brian, and as you look at them, I mean, there's so many things that come to mind. But to me, what really sticks out is the fact that I'm not sure there's a better team in the NFL than the San Francisco 49ers right now. To go to Green Bay in those conditions and win the way they did, speaks volumes. They're playing really good football at the right time. Sometimes it's all about who's playing the best at the right time, who peaks late. Have the Seahawks peaked? We're going to find out. The 49ers, on the other hand, got Crabtree back healthy. He's playing great to go along with Bolden and Davis. And that defense, which is healthier now, that is a dangerous football team.
I agree, Kenny. You know, it's about a month ago, 5 weeks ago, six games ago anyway, San Francisco looked like they were getting their healthy guys, or their guys back, the Michael Crabtrees, those kind of players. He means so much to that whole receiving core, and then they've got an outstanding defense as well. They've got the kind of game that travels well, and they're going to have to do it just like the Saints if they want to get into to the Super Bowl. They're going to have to play on the road, and they've got what I know we're going to talk about it. I like them to move on into the NFC Championship game, to be honest with you.
I do too. I think you're right. I think their game travels very well, and I think they've got revenge on their minds. Going to Carolina, the Panthers are good, and the Panthers won at San Francisco. But again, I really do think it's all about how a team is playing at a certain time. And while the Panthers are still winning, I don't think they're playing quite as well as they did in the front end of that winning streak as they are now. Torrance, your thoughts about Wild Card Weekend and what you saw?
Oh, great football all weekend. But I liked Indianapolis Colts. I thought it was, Luck had a phenomenal game, a great game. You thought this team was kind of dead out. The Reggie Wayne went down. They lost a couple games, but the last 3 games of the season, they win. And like you said, teams that are hot coming towards the end, this team came in hot, and they to be down, 28, 23 points and come back and win the game, I thought was a great job.
It really was. And let's take a look at the brackets now before we get Ricky's thoughts about what he saw this past weekend. So here we go with San Francisco at Carolina, a couple of 4-loss teams. Great matchup, rematch game. As we mentioned, the Saints, of course, at Seattle on Saturday. You get down to big boy football now with these matchups in the NFC. And over in the AFC, Indianapolis and New England renew their rivalry on Saturday evening. Patriots at home, and then guess what? San Diego gets Denver again. That's a dangerous game for the Broncos, for an opponent that has beaten them already, and they know them very well. So, Ricky, I'll look at the San Diego-Cincinnati game. To me, as I mentioned before, the quarterback position means so much, and the differential in that game was so great. Phillip Rivers, much better than Andy Dalton, and that's why San Diego won the game.
Well, they won the game because of that, but not only that, though. I mean, he run the ball instead of sliding like most of the quarterbacks do. Everybody want their quarterback sliding first, then they automatically referee blow the whistle, and they still got the ball. Going head first like that, letting the ground call the fumble, right there let you know that it was a bonehead play, and they turned the whole game around that, people realized that the quarterback really, wasn't the head of the team like you're looking for. And I mean, that made a big difference with them.
Ricky, I agree. And I'll tell you what, I'll go even to a play at the end of the first half where they were driving and one of the running backs, Bernard, fumbled the ball inside the 5. That was just crucial. And but you're right about Dalton. You know what? He's a young guy that's not made his mark in the game yet, and you can't make those mistakes in playoff time.
And Terrence he played football, and he know that. One thing about what Bernard did on the 5-yard line, you can't see a guy behind you. A lot of times you carry that ball, and a guy come up and take the ball from you. You can excuse that. Yeah. But to come and run the ball and get all those yards, and then go head first and lose the ball, that's totally different.
Yeah. Yes. These guys are turnovers. You can't have. We were just fortunate. We was fortunate yesterday. The Saints were fortunate to have 2 turnovers and still win the ball game. But odds tell us that it's not going to happen often unless you have a great defense that can back up those turnovers. You're going to have problems.
Brian, I give Andrew Luck a lot of credit. He's a special talent. But if you go on the entire package of the game, Alex Smith was better in this game than Andrew Luck was, who made mistakes but got away with it because Kansas City's defense had injuries, and for some reason they didn't account for T.Y. Hilton. The only real weapon the Colts had on offense is Hilton, and they're singling him throughout and getting beat by him throughout and made him look like a Hall of Famer.
They did, and Kansas City was losing players left and right. And go back to one play, you talk about a difference in a game. They could have maybe stemmed the tide. Remember when Smith overthrew that open receiver down the right sideline? If he gets the ball to the receiver, he walks in, and all of a sudden now they're not just down 10, they're up 10, they're up 17. That makes a hell of a difference.
That's Ricky. That's the difference in these games. One play, because you go back to the Saints Philadelphia. Riley Cooper wide open on a crossing route. He might still be running. He drops the ball.
Yeah, and what? That show you that it just be for you at some of those games. Terrence will tell you, man, just some of the things happen out there. You say, boy, that was just for us. And just like the Kansas City game, this guy supposed to stay in bounds. A good receiver like that, he don't even never get himself over that far to the out of bounds. So that was a lot of inexperience and mistakes that some of the guys made during the game.
Yeah, that was a good throw by Alex Smith. Again, just illustrating the fact that he played terrific football. Did he miss the one deep ball? Yes, but he threw 4 touchdowns, didn't turn it over, and made that throw as well, and he doesn't win. When we return, who should decide whether a player goes back in a game or not? On our Hot Seat segment here on WHNO Channel 20. Our sportsNOLA.com trivia question of the evening. How many 100-yard rushing performances have the Saints had in their playoff history? Come on. You know the answer. Think Eagles. Think Deuce. Think 2007. That's it. The only one. 143 yards. Saints win 27-23. And Deuce McAllister had a big game. And his last great moment, last great game for the Saints as a member of this franchise on his way to the Saints Hall of Fame. Ken Trahan, sportsNOLA.tv, Toyota of New Orleans, I-10 Service Road in New Orleans East with the best deals you'll ever find. Great deals for the New Year's, dependable vehicles as well. More on that coming up. Right now it's time for our hot seat segment where we put Brian Ellie Walsh on the hot seat and then tell everybody why he's wrong. And a particular subject comes to mind. And today it's all about who plays and when he plays. Obviously, concussion symptoms are a big issue in the NFL now. We know about the lawsuits. We know about the litany of players and the history of what has transpired. And we got an example of this in the Saints game this past weekend with Keenan Lewis, who desperately pleaded his case to get back on the field, but was not allowed to do so. Our topic of the day, who should make the decision about a player returning to a game after concussed symptoms? Should it be the team doctors, the coach, or the player? Or any one or two of the above? Brian Ellie Walsh, make a fool of yourself.
Thank you, Dr. Trahan. I'll try to keep the streak going. And you can take that however you want to take that. I would say this, that it's a joint effort, Kenny, but ultimately it's got to come down to the medical people involved. This is outlined well before a game, well before a season. It's a written rule where the medical group is going to make the decision. Now, of course, they're going to be taking input from the player. I don't think the coach needs to be, or coaches need to be involved at all. That's strictly between the doctor and the patient. And to me, the ultimate call is made by the doctor. They're professionals. This is what they're paid to do, and this is the way the rules read. And until they change the rules, the doctor makes the final call. I know Keenan Lewis wanted to come back in, but there's a lot of times, ultimately, you want to err on the side of saving, keeping a guy healthy. And this is the right decision they made.
And Brian and I never played the game, so it's easy for us to make observations, but these two gentlemen did play the game, so we definitely want their input and respect what they have to say about this topic, because both, I know, suffered these symptoms when they played. Torrance, you in particular.
Yes, I got knocked clean out. I've been knocked clean out before. But let's go back first and talk about the concussion and the lawsuit and all. The lawsuit is not saying we're not going to have concussions, we're not going to get hurt. We know that. This is football. These things happen. But what we're suing about is they knew the long-term effect of those concussions and letting us go back in and play. That is why we have the lawsuit. Now, to the game. I'm in agreement with Brian on this. I think it's up to the doctor, because if you leave it to a player, we want to play. If we can see the ball, we want to get back out there. We're okay. We have our families to feed. Guys don't want to lose their position, lose their spot, so they're going to get back out there. We're competitors. That's what we do. Do not leave it in our hands. If you leave it in our hands, 100% of the time, we're going to go back out there. You can't leave it in the coach's hands, because the coach is watching the game. He's in the game. He doesn't know what's going on. It's the doctor and the player, as you alluded to earlier. That's who's making the decision. But it has to be the doctor. The doctor knows the long-term effect. They know the results and all of what's going on. You have to leave it in that doctor's hand. Myself, back in the days before, this is one reason why we have the concussion, I got knocked clean out. I get out of the game, I had to get stitches. They stitched me up, they take me in the locker room, stitch me up, I come back out, and I get right back in the game. Got back in, caught an 84-yard touchdown. But what is the long-term effect of that? That's the part we don't know.
Well, just like Terrence saying, but my thing was I wanted to play football, so I was going to play regardless. I have hit so hard, I have knocked myself out just hitting somebody, and that's what my mentality was. But I remember one time, you know, I went back in, and I didn't know no defense or nothing. The only thing I told Coach was I'm a rush the quarterback, because that's the only thing I know. I couldn't remember no plays. Everything he called, he was going automatic. I was going forward. I knew I can do that, and that's what I did. And I had that 2 or 3 times to happen. And even with Walter Payton, man, I stayed kind of knocked out the whole halftime, but the third quarter, I came back and I still got back in the game. And the doctors didn't hold us out like they're doing now. You know, and the only thing that held Lewis out because he was showing symptoms of drowsiness and like he was about to fall down and stuff. That's why they held him out. But back in the day, they would never try to think about holding you out. They would let you went on and play. They don't care what happened to you.
Yes. I could do my best Steve Sidwell here for you. Ricky, I'm just go get the quarter.
That's all I can do, Ken. I would go forward. I didn't know none of the defense.
Well, I got to ask you two guys a question, then I'll render a judgment because you both play the game. Did you guys know that you were concussed? Were you clear enough to know whether you should go back in or not go in? If you were being truthful with yourself, well, yes or no, Torrance?
No, that's something we don't know.
Okay.
You got to understand. Back in the day, as we used to call, I got my bell wrong.
Okay.
I just got some cobwebs.
So you really didn't know?
No, you shake it off and get back in.
Ricky?
That's what we were taught.
Well, I mean, you know, I know at my point I shouldn't have been in the ball game because I didn't know nothing was going on. The only thing I know was going on, I was trying to get to the quarterback. I was going forward, so I know I shouldn't have been in the ball game.
Ricky,
one quick point, Brian.
Kenny, there was just one time where I knocked myself out over a bad lead, and I should have been taken out of the press box. But other than that, I was okay.
So we need to take you out right now.
I think so.
Take him out the show.
I think we've heard from the guys that matter here. The guys that played the game. Brian and I didn't play the game, so it's easy for us to sit upstairs, in the case of the Superdome, way upstairs, and try to make judgments about what we're looking at or watching on television. And we all saw Keenan Lewis, and he sure looked for the world like he was clear as could be and knew exactly what he was doing and pleading his case to get back on the field. Every player wants to play. Every player wants to win. In particular, when you're in a game of sudden death, such as a playoff game. It goes without saying that if you give Ricky Jackson the decision, he's going to go back in the game. If you give Torrance Small the decision, he's going to go back in the game. If you don't go back in and they try to put you back in, then they look at you as being a non-team guy or yellow. You're chicken. You don't want to play. Listen, it has to be in the hands of the medical people. You have to be safe about this because we've seen the ramifications long term. And it's not like that with everybody, but it doesn't matter if it's everybody. All it takes is one or two lives to be ruined, and you see the end result. It simply isn't worth it. The system is correct now, even though we want Keenan Lewis on the field. Let's hope he's clear enough to be on the field next week. Back in just a moment to talk some college football and more as sportsNOLA TV continues from Toyota of New Orleans. Prominent sporting events. Hope you enjoyed our coverage of the 4th annual All-State Sugar Bowl National Prep Classic over at the Hilario Center. I even saw Torrance Small over there, so it must have been significant. And we enjoyed that. Congratulations to Riverside, the boys, and Selman, the girls, for winning the championships of that prestigious event. sportsNOLA TV continues from Toyota of New Orleans in New Orleans East on the I-10 Service Road. I'm Ken Trahan, and college football bowl games, well, they've been fun to watch every step of the way. The LSU Tigers took care of business beating the Iowa Hawkeyes, and LSU winning their 10th game for the 4th straight season, and for the 7th time in 9 years under Les Miles, a monster game for Jeremy Hill in what was likely his final game. And then, of course, in the All-State Sugar Bowl, Torrance Small inspired Oklahoma to a 45-31 victory over Alabama. It's all about Small. And I think Knight had a little bit to do with it. I'm just saying. I don't know. And A.J. McCarron threw for a lot of yards, but he made 2 big mistakes in the game, and that was enough to get Alabama beat. And kudos to Oklahoma. The national championship game coming up here this evening. It's Auburn and Florida State. SEC trying to win an 8th consecutive BCS national title in the final BCS national championship game, if you will. Florida State won it in 2000. Auburn, of course, won it with Cam Newton and company in 2010 when Gus Malzahn was offensive coordinator. Now he's the head coach. Now we've got a game that a lot of people think is going to be high scoring. Brian, is that the way you see this game tonight?
I'm going to go with the season averages, Kenny. Florida State 53, Auburn 40. I think it's going to be high scoring, yeah.
You're close.
No, I tell you.
Yeah,
You know what? It's just amazing. You know, let's give the BCS people kudos. They're going out. They did they got it right, and they've gotten it more right than they have gotten it wrong. And I think the two best teams. My heart says Auburn. My brain says Florida State, Kenny.
Which means, of course, Auburn will win, Torrance.
Well, I'm from the state of Florida. I'm going with Florida
Okay.
State. I'm going to go with Florida State. And if you want to win, go with me. As you can see, I've been picking them lately. That's me, Mr. Pick'em. I got it.
Yeah, but did you speak to Florida State? Did you do chapel for them?
That's right.
I'm hoping they give me a call. It's not too late. It's not too
They
late.
can fly them in at the last minute and get it done. All right, Ricky, what do you think?
Well, I like chance. I'm from Florida, so I'm going with Florida. You know, Florida, both teams have a lot of speed. Should be a great game tonight, and it should be a good, hard-hitting game. But it's gonna come down to those quarterbacks. Which one perform the best?
Well, I'm not from Florida, and even if I was, I wouldn't pick the team because they were from the same place I was. I picked the team I thought was better. I think Florida State's a little bit better football team, and I think they'll win the game. And another factor I think that goes in their favor is the fact that they've had a long time to prepare for this read option offense, which is so tough to defend in 1 week's time. Given 4 weeks playing assignment football, you have a much better chance to slow it down. You're not going to stop Auburn. They do a great job, and Marshall has improved every step of the way. And Malzahn does a great job with their scheme and with this offense, but the reality is Florida State has balance. They run it, they throw it, and it's all about who can get a stop or two. I think Florida State can get more stops than Auburn, so I'm going to go with the Seminoles in this one. It was a big week for high school football players of note as well, because some prominent players were playing in all-star games and making commitments, like Speedy Knoll to Texas A&M. What's with the glove thing now? I mean, it's, of course, I have a lot to say about this process, which I think stinks, frankly, but that's another story. Leonard Fournette, of course, regarded as the #1 player in the nation, and rightfully so, chooses LSU, much to the delight of his family and a whole bunch of people in the state of Louisiana. And then they go out and play the game, and Fournette scores a touchdown. Knoll has some really good plays in the game, and Louisiana well represented across the board. Leonard Fournette can do it all, running, receiving, you name it. Great player. And then here are the guys of note that made commitments in these games that we were talking about. The one in particular, the Under Armour game. Leonard and Speedy to A&M, Willis to Florida. A bit of a surprise. Jamal Adams, well, he's a great safety, 5-star player at LSU. And Tony Brown was a flip a coin between LSU and Alabama. He chose the Crimson Tide. It's a great year in Louisiana for talent, Brian, and I'm happy for the kids. What I'm not happy about is this process. It's gotten so prostituted, it's ridiculous. These made-for-TV games, by where they sit these kids on couches, even though most of them have already made their decisions, and tell them to hold it from telling the public until they can sit on a couch during an alleged all-star game, it's just ridiculous. Social media is one thing, but to play this up the way it is, the glorification of these young men. We remember what happened to Russell Shepard. They made him out to be the greatest thing since sliced bread, and he was a bust at LSU. He went through all this stuff, and I think really got a little bit fat, not physically, but mentally, from all the attention. I don't like what it's become, do you?
No, and Kenny, I read an account today where Speedy Knoll, he ain't locked into Texas A&M, from what I understand. But that
I think he is, but go ahead.
But he was pressured into making that decision on, on television, that they bring them there to, and this is why they bring them there in some cases. We want you to declare it be part of our game. And look, I think it starts well before this Under Armour game when we could go on and
right.
on and on.
They do put pressure on them to do this, and they don't have to do it.
No.
But there's a subtle underpinning here that, hey, we want you to come, but we want you to make that decision, buddy.
Exactly. It's a moneymaker. It's a moneymaker. It keeps everybody in tune. It gets everybody to watch. It gets the ratings up. It's a moneymaker. But when these kids go and receive some money from someone, then it's a problem. And I think it's wrong. Like you say, I think it's definitely wrong.
And Leonard Fournette's mind was already made up, Ricky. He was going to go to LSU. There was never a doubt about this. And even 30 minutes before he made that announcement, the Twitter world's blowing up that he's gone to Texas with J.L. Mora or with Nick Saban. It's just ridiculous what this stuff's become. It's totally blown out of proportion. you were recruited, it was nothing like this then.
Well, I mean, you know, they highly recruited guys. You know, they're getting a lot of fame and a lot of publicity. But, you know, it's good for them for one reason. That all of them got their family there. Their family getting the chance to be seen on TV and all that. But my whole thing was they knew what they was going there for, to make a decision on TV. And once you commit to that, then you got to do what you have to do. But my thing was, I know he was going to, a lot of people feel like he was going to LSU. Texas didn't have a coach. If Texas would have hired Strong from the jump, they'd have had a lot more recruits and stuff that would have committed to them. But, you know, they was late with the
They messed it up.
their coach.
They messed it up. Their timing was bad. Brian, it's always a pleasure, my friend.
Thank you, buddy.
Thank you for
Always
being
a
part
pleasure.
and parcel as always. We'll get you back next week. When we return, we'll tell you all about some of the wonderful deals and vehicles here at Toyota of New Orleans as we continue with sportsNOLAtv on WHNO Channel 20. Toyota of New Orleans, 13150 I-10 Service Road, New Orleans East, just past Bullard. It's as good as it gets. We thank Troy Duhan and all the Premier family for making it possible for us to be here and for continuing to do the outstanding job that they do across the board. That's Toyota of New Orleans here in the East. TGI Fridays provides food for us. We thank them at 3330 Veterans Boulevard in Metairie for their continuing support. Thanks to Ronnie Bouvier and his fine crew. Prep Recruiting Insider, back on with you. That's right, a new episode coming up at a special time at 5 p.m. this week on Wednesday. That's 5 p.m. Make a note of it. As Prep Recruiting Insider with Will Brown and Renee Nadeau. Ken Trahan, sportsNOLAtv from Toyota of New Orleans, joined by the outstanding general manager of Toyota New Orleans, Will Lewis. Lewis, great to have you with us. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you guys. Thanks for having me.
Well, obviously, when I think Toyota, I think Tundras, I think Camrys, I think Corollas, I think Highlanders. Avalon, obviously, is a really good vehicle. There's much to offer here.
Oh, definitely. And right now, it's never been a better time to buy some of these new Toyota products. On the ones you mentioned, the all-new 14 Camrys, we have 0% available. Tundras, we have 0% available. The RAV4s on the 13s, we're having our end-of-the-year closeout on our remaining 13 models, RAV4, 2013 Highlanders, 2013 RAV4s. We have 0%, or you can lease one of them for $199 a month with 0 down on the 13 RAV4 and Highlanders. In addition to that, we have the new 2014 Camrys special with 0% for 60 months or $199 a month with just $1,000 down. So we got some great deals right now. We just finished the year, 2013. We were the #1 store in New Orleans East. So we outsold our market, outsold Honda, Chrysler, the Dodge store, also Chevy in New Orleans East. So we're making some deals. So just drive on out to New Orleans East and save some money.
Now I hear about the 2013, which is a great deal. 2014, the Tundra. I have a construction company. What are some of the features that's on the Tundra that bring my interest to it?
Well, the great thing about the Tundra, is, especially if you have a company, is that we have a fleet model truck where Toyota, just for companies, we can set you up with a line of credit. You can buy as many trucks as you need for your company under a fleet deal, set you up with a commercial line of credit, and Toyota also gives you an additional $1,000 rebate for any truck you buy for your company.
Ricky, he's talking your language with trucks, right?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I've been talking to him. I like the, I really like this Avalanche here. I mean, I've been looking at all the trucks, but this Avalanche here, man, for my girl, this is a nice car right here.
Yeah.
Well, that's the 2014 Avalon, Ricky, Toyota Avalon. That's actually Toyota's flagship model. That's our #1 selling luxury car. With that Avalon, you can pick up that Avalon right now at 0% down, or you can also lease it, 36 months, $299 a month.
You got to do it by coming here. 13150 I-10 Service Road in New Orleans East. Toyota of New Orleans, part of the Premier family with premier vehicles. Will, thanks so much for joining us, and thanks for having us here.
Thank you. Appreciate
Our
y'all
pleasure.
coming.
Ricky and Torrance, always a pleasure. God bless you all, and thank you all for joining us as well. Back at our normal time at 6 next week for another edition of sportsNOLAtv. Until then, God bless you one and all. Rounding third and heading home. So long.